Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and this is going to be one of those videos where I'm going to give you tons of links. I'm going to say just a little bit about each one, and then I'm going to leave the links down below in the description so you can go back and you can look at them yourself and check them all out, because I've been listening to the questions going on all day today. And I also listened to the rally, and I'm tired, and I really want to get this information out to you because some of it is very stunning. And so, if you've not been following too much about Ukraine and things, I think you're going to be astonished at what I'm going to present. So here we go. Let me get going. First of all, I'm going to start out with this. Susan Collins has released this statement. And here's what she has to say. We have heard the cases argued and questions answered. In keeping with the model used for impeachment trial of President Clinton, at this point, senators are able to make an informed judgment about what is in dispute and what is important to the underlying issues. I worked with colleagues to ensure the schedule for the trial included a guaranteed up or down vote on whether or not to call witnesses. I believe hearing from certain witnesses would give each side the opportunity to more fully and fairly make their case, resolve any ambiguity, and provide additional clarity. Therefore, I will vote in support of the motion to allow witnesses and documents to be subpoenaed. If this motion passes, I believe that the most sensible way to proceed would be for the House managers and President's attorney to attempt to agree on a limited and equal number of witnesses for each side. If they can't agree, then the Senate should choose the number of witnesses. Yeah, we'll see how that works out. Anyway, that's what she says. So she's going to vote for witnesses, but I have heard that they have 50 votes, so that should block it. If it does tie, well, technically, John Roberts can break the tie, and we're going to talk about him in a minute. But, a lot of people are saying they don't think he will. They think that he'll just kind of abstain, and that would make it dead in the water, because if it's a 50-50 vote, then it would not pass. So I wanted to share that with you. And then here's the trouble with having the witnesses, because it doesn't matter how many witnesses we give them or how many documents. Look at Nancy Pelosi says that he will not be acquitted. Even if they vote to acquit him, he will not be acquitted. She's not going to accept it, in other words. And it won't matter how much. Well, this article actually is based on this, and I'm going to play it for you so you can hear what she has to say. Here we go.
When this is over, do you think that President Trump will be chastened and understand that he's got a Congress watching him, or will he be emboldened because the Senate will have acquitted him?
Well, he will not be acquitted. You cannot be acquitted if you don't have a trial. And you don't have a trial if you don't have witnesses and documentation and that. I would hope that the senators, if it comes to a tie, or if there's a question of hearing testimony or receiving documents, would leave it up to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Republican appointed in a Republican majority court. I would think that they would have confidence in the Chief Justice of the United States. That's really his title. And that's interesting to me, that they're afraid of breaking a tie with the Chief Justice of the United States. Does the president know right from wrong? I don't think so.
So you see, it really does not matter, because they've already decided that he's guilty, and they don't want to hear anything that might go contrary to that. And if they can't find something, they're going to keep digging till they do. And if they can't actually find real legitimate people, they will make something up, just like they did with Kavanaugh. Because, those people came back later on, those women, and we found out that they were lying purposely, that they had made it up just to get along with the bunch of people. It's just, this is what they do, the wrap-up smear. If they don't have dirt on somebody, they just make it up, and they keep repeating it until everybody believes it. That's how they work. So I'll leave the link to this down below so you can see that one too. And then I wanted to show you this one because she's not happy. This is a Democrat here, and she's for Politico. she covers the House Democrats. So, of course, she's with them. And it says, notable from inside the chamber, earlier Sekulow went after 3 Dem senators directly accusing them of a double standard on Ukraine, called them out by name, Durbin, Leahy, and Menendez. Well, that's because they sent a letter. And so he was reciting the letter. It's a matter of public record. I've seen the letter. I remember seeing it. So, yeah, they interfered, and they wanted to get interference from Ukraine in the election. But, no, and they want to get on Trump. It's just, they want investigations, but of course, not Trump. They can't do that. So the entire Dem side of the room was visibly unsettled, if outright angry. Yeah, they were angry because they were exposed. Anyway, going on. Got lots of them here. This is from Sean Davis, and if you don't know who he is, over here it says co-founder of the Federalist, and I love the way chainsaw bayonet enthusiast. Anyway, Trump White House counsel Pat Cipollone. Democrats accuse Trump of trying to, quote, cheat in the election. Yet it's Democrats themselves who are trying to throw Trump off the ballot because they don't want to face him in an election. How is their impeachment not the ultimate form of cheating? Okay, I made this meme because this is what dawned on me the other day. They're doing this purposely to interfere with the election because look what they did. In 2016, they bought that stupid Steele dossier, had Steele put it together, and used that because they were hoping that would keep Trump from being elected. Well, that didn't work. Then they go on, and they did, of course, all the other stuff along the way, trying to keep him from being elected. And then in 2018, what did they do? Oh, remember, 2018 we spent with the whole Mueller-Russia collusion hoax. And so that was to interfere with the 2018 election, and it worked. Because they ended up getting the House, which has been a huge headache and pain in the butt ever since. And then, of course, for the 2020, what are they doing now? Surprise, surprise. They've got another thing that they're bringing up. I'm telling you, folks, it's not going to end. And it doesn't matter what we find out. They could have God himself stand in front of the Senate and say, Trump didn't do anything wrong. And they still wouldn't believe him. Yeah. Anyway, over here. Okay, this is from the White House. It is absolutely legitimate to ask questions about this because, here we have, this is it from Politico, January 11th, 2017. Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump. And then in Politico, again, that same article, the Ukrainian efforts had an impact in the race. And then this one was from Financial Times, August 28, 2016. Ukrainians leaders campaign against pro-Putin Trump. Kyiv's wider political leadership to do something they would never have attempted before, intervene, however, indirectly in a U.S. election. And again, from the Financial Times article, some key Ukrainian political figures are getting involved in an unprecedented degree to trying to weaken the Trump bandwagon. Okay, now I want to tell you that part of what they're saying is true, that Ukraine did not interfere in our 2016 election. Okay, but several Ukrainians did, and a lot of them were very high-level people. So that's the difference. And when they're talking, they say, see, it's just a matter of semantics here. They did interfere, but it wasn't the country itself that interfered. Yeah, well, there's a reason for it. Let's keep going because, yeah, you're going to find out. Anyway, I thought this was very interesting that, yes, Viktor Shokin files federal complaint against Joe Biden. And this came out on the 29th. So, Joe Biden bragged about that's the guy that Joe Biden got ousted, Viktor Shokin. And so Shokin is taking him to court. And he's going to try to get something out of it, and they're also, Biden suggested during his talk that Barack Obama was in on the threat, and so it goes on, this whole thing, and so Viktor Shokin filed an official complaint against Joe Biden for interference in Ukraine's legal proceedings. There you go. I think it's delicious. Yeah. Anyway, now we're going to go with He Who Shall Not Be Named. I'm not going to read through this thread, but it's very good. Very, very good. And if you get into this, you'll understand. I can't say much more on here, but there was a coup in Ukraine. And this coup d'etat was violent because 100 people were killed. This whole thing was orchestrated by one of our 3-letter agencies. And I bet you can guess which one. Yeah, John Brennan. So anyway, you need to look through this. I put this one up here, the Thread Reader app version, because it's the same thing. But the reason I put this is because sometimes if they go through and they delete things like this because it names people that shall not be named, and you'll understand why he shall not be named once you see this. The reason the Thread Reader app does better, because if they delete it, I think it will stay in this Thread Reader app. So if you have this link, you'll be able to go back to it and reference it, even if that thread is deleted. Okay, now this article right here from New Cold War, it's not a pro-Republican type thing. It's definitely not pro-Trump, but it's not anti-Trump necessarily. But it talks about how the idea of having quid pro quo, this kind of mentality is nothing new for U.S. foreign policy. And in fact, it states that the writer believes that it was pretty much business as usual until Trump got in office. And of course, he does not take Trump's side on this. He doesn't say that Trump is innocent, but just a very interesting article there, and that's from September 30th. I thought maybe you'd like to see that one. This was also very interesting because after you read that thread about he who shall not be named, you'll understand, because he was at the heart of orchestrating that coup, and so was Victoria Nuland. This whole coup d'etat was orchestrated by us. And so, yeah. You need to listen to the phone call, too, because they were talking about installing their own people in, and, who they wanted to then be put in to the country to lead it. And if you look at it, it was April 29th of 2014 when this was posted. So check it out. Listen to it. It's not very long. It's 5 minutes. And I think you'll appreciate listening. But make sure you read that thread first in Twitter, because if you don't, it won't make as much sense. Anyway, connections. Just gonna say there are lots of connections going around, and all of these people are connected somehow. And that might explain why he shall not be named. So, very big. In case you didn't hear it, the other day, what it would have been Wednesday? Was that right? The last day that they did their defense arguments, Tuesday? I don't know. The days are all blurring together here, folks. It was Tuesday. Anyway, this was Pam Bondi talking about the whole Ukraine Hunter Biden thing. She did an excellent job. If you've not seen it, it's about half an hour long. Worth watching, definitely. And then I wanted to point this out to you too, because John Solomon states that factual timeline conflicts with key Adam Schiff argument at impeachment trial. Ukraine started new Burisma probe months before Trump raised issue in call with Ukraine's new president. So the investigation was already going on by Ukraine. Okay? Which that right there is pivotal. And that should have been brought out. I wish I'd have known about it sooner, because I would have somehow suggested it to people that they get it through to the senators to ask that question. But I don't believe they did. I don't know. There were a couple points, folks, over the last few days that I did kind of nod off, I think. But I tried not to, and I really did try to watch the whole thing, painful as it was at times. There were a couple of good questions, and I'm going to put one on here at the end in just a minute. But this is, John Solomon has a podcast, and it's called John Solomon Reports. I think this one is pretty good, because that's where he talks about the timeline, if you want to just hear him talk about it. About 24 minutes long. So Again, I'm giving you lots to do, folks. I have lots of these. He has a website too, and his website is johnsolomonreports.com. And here's where he talks about the Ukraine scandal timeline Democrats and their media allies don't want America to see. So here it is. If you don't want to listen to it, or if you want to listen and follow along, here is the whole thing, and you can follow along his timeline. Now, he does not mention he who shall not be named or the coup. But, as you go through this, he gives another side of the story here. And he always gives documents and everything. And talks about George Soros's Open Society Foundation, publishes anti-corruption strategy for Ukraine, identifying the Anti-Corruption Action Center, a nonprofit that Soros's foundation and the U.S. State Department jointly fund as the leading edge of the foundation strategy for Ukraine. Yeah. We helped fund it, and George Soros helped fund it. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Anyway, if you go through that list, it really is good, but it does contradict, Adam Schiff's timeline, because Adam Schiff is trying to say that Trump only started this whole Ukraine thing once Biden announced, and I believe he announced in May, maybe, of 2019. I don't remember exactly, but frankly, I think that Biden announced because it was really starting to heat up. It was actually coming out in the newspaper a lot right then. And that's when that video of Biden with the quid pro quo thing started really circulating on Twitter. And why? Well, because it was starting to come out. So all of a sudden Joe goes, "Ooh, I'm going to run for president." I think he believed it would give him some kind of immunity. So, so what does Joe Biden do? Now, this came out on January 21st. That's when John Solomon posted it. Joe Biden's conspiracy theory memo to U.S. media doesn't match facts. Guess what? Joe Biden sends out this, to reporters and editors. And this is from his deputy campaign manager and communications director and his senior advisor. The imperative for honest coverage of Trump's Ukraine conspiracy theory. Donald Trump is the only American president to have weaponized foreign and national security policy in an attempt to coerce a foreign country into lying about a rival presidential candidate. Yeah, wait until everything comes out. This effort by President Trump is the reason he is now the third U.S. president to be impeached. His objective was to pressure the Ukrainian government into spreading a malicious and conclusively debunked conspiracy theory that Vice President Biden engaged in wrongdoing when he executed official United States policy to remove a corrupt prosecutor from office. They got an extra space right there. Wonder if they deleted something and then had to add something in or whatever. This theory, which the New Yorker has explained, originated from disgraced journalist, and they put that in quotes, John Solomon, with the help of Breitbart editor Peter Schweitzer. He's the one that did the Clinton cash. And so, yeah, he's done a couple of exposés there. He knows what he's talking about with the corruption. Alleges that Biden was in fact trying to stop the investigation of Burisma, a Ukrainian natural gas company on whose board his son served. According to the White House's memorandum, and here is the memorandum if you want to go to that, of President Trump's call with President Zelensky, Trump urged his counterpart, quote, "There's a lot of talk about Biden's son that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that, so whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution, so if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me." Right? That's what Trump said. Virtually every major media organization has definitively debunked this accusation. Again, they've debunked it because they just ordained that it is now debunked. So they haven't actually, they just said, "It shall from hereforth ever be known as debunked." Yeah, that's how they do it. And going on. As the Wall Street Journal wrote, on the call, Mr. Trump raised a discredited claim that as Vice President, Mr. Biden called for the ouster of Ukraine's prosecutor general to protect his son, who sat on the board of a Ukrainian company whose owner the prosecutor had investigated. The prosecutor was the target of widespread criticism from the U.S. and other countries and had in fact hampered the investigation into the company Burisma Group. Since Trump was exposed debasing his office in an unprecedented way, his defenders have attempted to distract from his malfeasance and smear Biden by repeating this now comprehensively debunked conspiracy theory. And it's even more debunked the more you say it. You just keep saying it. Doesn't make that true. Republicans will play this broken record over and over again during the Senate trial, based on the immense volume of independent sources that have refuted these claims. Oh, yes, immense volume of independent sources that say, we've debunked it. It's been debunked, even though nobody actually has. We believe that for the purpose of not misinforming readers and viewers and not engaging in partisan propaganda, any media organization referencing, reporting on, or repeating these claims must state clearly and unambiguously that they have been discredited and debunked by authoritative sources, including America's European allies, the IMF, leading figures of Ukraine's anti-corruption community, and even Republican members of the House and Senate and Trump administration officials testifying under oath. No, and again, no. It is not sufficient to say that the allegations are unsubstantiated or that no evidence has emerged to support them. Not only is there no evidence for the Republicans' main argument against the vice president, there is a mountain of evidence. A mountain. This is serious. There's a mountain of evidence. It's kind of like Schiff and his overwhelming evidence, but yet he needs more. And that actively debunks it. Again, see, they say it, but there is none. And when they try to see the actual evidence to debunk it, you go, okay, give me the links. Why are there not links here? There aren't links. They're not saying, here's a source that debunks it, here's a source, here, and listing them all, which would make sense. But oh no. We're not doing that. We're just going to tell you that there's a mountain of evidence and you need to believe us because we wouldn't lie to you about that. We're not covering up for Joe. Oh, no. And it is malpractice to ignore the truth. Like a threat here. Malpractice to ignore that truth. Over the past year, both before and after President Trump's attempt to force President Zelensky to act as a disingenuous extension of his re-election campaign was publicized, investigative reporting, interviews with experts, and sworn testimony have debunked the wild-eyed accusations that Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and their allies have leveled at Vice President Biden. And again, they keep saying that. Fact checkers across the mainstream media have had a field day with this conspiracy theory. Yeah, a left-wing fact checkers. All left-wing. For example, as the New York Times' fact-checking team writes, Biden's actions were in line with United States foreign policy as well as the stated positions of Senate Republicans, European Union leaders, and the International Monetary Fund, all of whom were calling for the ouster of the prosecutor general. See, I'm not believing that. Not at all. Shokin, they're trying to dirty up Shokin's name because they know Shokin's got the dirt on them. According to the Associated Press, again, look at their sources, New York Times, Associated Press, it's, quote, incorrect to say that Biden, now a 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, pressed to have the prosecutor fired while the prosecutor was investigating Burisma, the energy company in Ukraine, where Biden's son Hunter sat on the board of directors. In fact, by the time Biden came out against the prosecutor, the investigation into the company was dormant. Lie. Biden, among other international officials, was pressing for a more aggressive investigation of corruption into Ukraine, not a softer one. Lie. I mean, really. The Washington Post fact checker, again, Washington Post, has also weighed in on this many times. The prosecutor general, Viktor Shokin, let that investigation and others go dormant. Yeah, we're going to find out when Viktor Shokin gets a chance to testify. And it'll be interesting when he has that, case against Biden. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Imagine the discovery in that. And the United States and its allies decided he was not effective in his job and, in fact, let corruption flourish. Yeah, that was not happening. No, Poroshenko was the one who was in bed with Biden, and that's why, he was the president at the time, and that's why all this corruption was going on, and it's also why Trump couldn't address it before Poroshenko was out and Zelensky was in. Yeah. So the timing had to do with Zelensky's election more than it had to do with Biden throwing his hat in the ring. That happened after everything started really hitting the fan, I think. In a deep dive, they did a deep dive. The Los Angeles Times found, quote, current and former U.S. and Ukrainian officials say Burisma had been under scrutiny for alleged improper acquisition of licenses, a probe unrelated to Hunter Biden's position on the board. Still, what knowledge and skills did Hunter Biden have that earned him more in a month than I make in 5 years? Okay? Gotta ask, really. So it says the investigation went dormant, they said. They keep using that, dormant. That must be the word of the day. Before Biden and a group of U.S. allies pushed for Shokin's ouster in 2015, arguing he was turning a blind eye to corruption. Yeah, I don't think he was. NBC News even labeled the notion that Biden acted corruptly as vice president to benefit his son. One of the biggest false claims Trump made in 2019. Yeah, you know what? I still remember when Trump said that Obama had wiretapped him, and they all said, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, and Trump's crazy, and now we find out it was true. In fact, it was worse than true, which, I found a whole ton of articles, and the next one I show you probably is going to have more to do with this. Anyway, so that's the gist of this. I'm going to let you finish reading it. It's not a whole lot longer, but, it's just, it's so funny that he wrote this. I want to show this to you because it's so funny that he wrote this, basically telling all these media outlets, you cannot say anything bad about what happened with that, and you can't accuse Joe of quid pro quo, and you can't do that because that's propaganda. If you do that, you got to tell the truth, and it's got to be our truth. Okay, that's what they're saying. So then they come here and they say, no political entity, not the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party, not the Biden campaign nor the Trump campaign can ever be allowed to act as your editors. But here's a whole memo that's pointing it out and that's saying, you can't do this. You've got to play ball with us. It's just, they are such hypocrites and they don't even see it. Oh my gosh. Anyway, it's not a whole lot longer here. That's the bottom of it. But anyway, let's go on because we got more to do here, folks. And it's getting late. Anyway, so yeah, this is from a year ago. A year ago, January 3rd. And this was from Big Lead Politics. And it's a good article to read because you may not know that Brennan and Clapper were accused of hacking not only this FISA court judge, but also, you know who, another very famous judge. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah. Also, in addition to Supreme Court Justice John Roberts. Okay. So this says that the Big League Politics expose on the alleged Roberts hack, and there's the link to it, has rocked the corridors of power. Now we have more information coming to light about the FISA courts. So that could add a little bit of information. A lot of times this stuff is like having a huge puzzle in front of you, and you're picking up pieces. And it used to be a year ago, we didn't have a whole lot of pieces in place. But now we have a whole lot more. And they're starting to fall into place a lot faster. And this is one of them, I think, that back then we didn't know enough to really say, well, yeah, that doesn't sound very feasible at the time. But now we're looking at it going, oh, okay. That sounds pretty much in line with everything else that was going on. And it explains a lot about the FISA court. Yep. Anyway, I wanted to also leave the link to this down below. This was just posted. Soros threatens Justice Roberts' surprise during impeachment. And basically he just it's not a, he never does obvious threats. It's kind of a covert one. But he mentions the Chief Justice a few times, and it's not very long. It's about a minute 46. Now, I know some of you want me to play it, but, I don't want to do that because it's not my video. And so a minute 46 is the whole video. I can't do that and take it away from the other person. You need to go to their channel and give them the views. And I have no idea why all these people gave it thumbs down, probably because of the content. And he's being his typical self there. I'm not sure exactly when that took place, but it says up here the 23rd of January. So don't know. And then this was something else. Now, I'm not 100% sure on this. I think this is probably legitimate. I would need to go through the document myself. This is the flight log for Epstein. So it seems kind of odd that it's coming out now, and I didn't notice it earlier or didn't see any reports of it earlier. Maybe I just missed them. Okay. But anyway, here he is listed. So that could be very telling too, and probably explains a lot as to why, we're in the situation we are. And he seemed to protect he who shall not be named. But they did get a question in, the Republicans did. They kind of changed it and took his name out and dealt with the Misko guy instead, Sean Misko. And they actually got the question out there. But of course, it was not answered, and Adam Schiff pretty much just went into a rage about it. He got really ticked off. So they did not get the answer. Anyway, I've got a couple clips I want to show you from the hearing, from the questioning today, and that's what I'm going to end with. So I'll tell you right now, I want to thank you for stopping by. Don't forget all the links are down below in the description, and I'll see y'all later.
The question from Senator Burr and the other senators is for both parties. The House will answer first. Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee hired a retired foreign spy to work with Russian contacts to build a dossier of opposition research against her political opponent, Donald Trump. Under the House manager's standard, would the Steele dossier be considered as foreign interference in a U.S. election, a violation of the law, and/or an impeachable offense?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice and distinguished senators. Thank you for the question. The analogy is not applicable to the present situation because, first, to the extent that opposition research was obtained, it was opposition research that was purchased.
Mr. Chief Justice, members of the Senate, so I guess you could buy, that's what it sounds like. You can buy a foreign interference. You could, if you purchase it, if you purchase their opposition research, I guess it's okay. So let me try to debunk the conspiracy, Manager Jeffries, and that is, it is not a conspiracy that Christopher Steele was engaged to obtain and prepare a dossier on the presidential candidate for the Republican Party, Donald Trump. It is not a conspiracy that Christopher Steele utilized his network of assets, including assets apparently in Russia, to draft the dossier. It is not a conspiracy that the dossier was shared with the Department of Justice through Bruce Orr, who was the number 4 ranking member of the Department of Justice at that time, because his wife, Nellie Orr, happened to be working for the organization Fusion GPS that was putting the dossier together. This is also not a conspiracy. It sounds like one, except it's real. And it's also not a conspiracy that that dossier, purchased dossier, was taken by the FBI, submitted to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to obtain a foreign intelligence surveillance order on an American citizen. It is also not a conspiracy that that court issued an order, 2 of them now, condemning the FBI's practice and acknowledging that many of those orders were not properly issued. None of that is a conspiracy theory. That's just the facts. Thank you.
Question from Senator Inhofe, joined by Senators Rounds and Young, for counsel to the President. Even if additional witnesses are called, do you ever envision the House managers agreeing there has been a fair Senate trial if it ends in the President's acquittal?
Mr. Chief Justice, members of the Senate, the answer is no. Now, they will not agree that it's fair because what will happen is if there's a discussion of witnesses, and if we go to witnesses, Mr. Schumer's laid out the four he wants. Now he tells me I can have anybody, we can have anybody we want. But the reality is that also includes documents. And that includes other witnesses that it may lead to. So at some point you'll say, because this cannot go on forever and we will be at the election, this body will say, this has to come to an end. And they will say, aha, it's been brought to an end as we were about to get the key evidence. But what is so interesting here is they had 17 witnesses that they had. When the hearing took place before the Judiciary Committee, if I'm not mistaken, Manager Nadler, you had 4 witnesses, I think, at one point, when you had the law professors. And there was 3 law professors from the Democratic side, and there was 1 from the Republican side. So if we're going to take that same 4-to-1 analysis, for every one of their witnesses, we should get 4. But there was a question earlier asked about the fruit of the poisonous tree. The taint of the poison does not age well. The longer it goes does not make that poison go away. It gets deeper and deeper into the soil. And here the soil we're talking about is a trial that would be not only ongoing, but they put up 17 witnesses. You heard them. They're acting like there's been no witnesses presented here. They presented testimony, 17. They may not have liked that we were able to respond to those 17 by playing those witnesses' words. By the way, those witnesses, the testimony of those witnesses were never done with the cross-examination by the counsels for the president. So, does this end? Will it ever be enough? No, it'll only be enough if they got a conviction. Because that's what it's about. Because let's not forget for a moment, this has been going on in one stage or another for 3 years now. My concern is where's the end point in that? So their end point is, well, just give us John Bolton, and then, you don't get anybody, or you get one and we get one, and then that one may lead to somebody else. It's not the way it works. So they've said overwhelming, proved 63 times. 63 times. And as we're 3 hours away from answering the end of the question section, we're about to go into it sounds like we've been arguing about witnesses for the last couple hours, but that starts tomorrow. But do I think that is it our position that there will be a recognition that there's due process has been reached and we've reached the happy accord? No, I do not believe that. I also don't believe that what can be cured here. I don't think what they did can be cured here by anything you were to do as far as witnesses or anything else. That process was so tainted. Now, I thought Mr. Philbin did a very effective job of explaining painstakingly now, and multiple times I know, the issue of those subpoenas. And I thought the perfect analysis was when one of the managers said, well, when people file Freedom of Information Act requests, they get answers. And Mr. Philbin said that's because they followed the law. They followed the rules. That is not what happened here. Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice.
Thank you, counsel.